Hey, this is Tater with the CG Dojo Basic Shots Project. We're going to talk about flat reps. But first I want to talk to you about a very basic geometric concept called the triangular plane of the sword. So what this lets you do is, it lets you circumvent a guard by inserting the opponent's weapon into the triangular plane. This triangle is made up of these three lines, right? You have the line of your sword, obviously, because swords are important to sweet wax. You also have the line of your forearm, and you also have an imaginary line that connects the crook of your elbow to the tip of your sword. So what ends up happening with this is, if I throw a basic chop, right, in this direction, if a person's guard is in the way, obviously they're going to block. But if you use this triangular plane of the sword by flat wrapping and get their guard somewhere in this triangular plane, you have a really good chance of going around their guard and striking them. Now, this brings up basically flat wraps, right? So flat wraps are a really common long-range shot. They're kind of your hook to your end guard boxing metaphor. They're a tiny, tiny bit slower than a chop, but they're also much more likely to hit your opponent. They're a little bit more difficult to recover from defensively, but don't let that dissuade you from using them. A lot of fights resolve with a diligent use of flat wraps, right? So I'm going to show you what I consider the base flat wrap, which is it's basically the same side shoulder. So you need to consider this your base form for the flat wrap. Now, a flat wrap is a lot like a chop. However, if you remember from the first video where we were talking about components of motion, this requires internal shoulder rotation, right? So at the end of our shot, as we extend this elbow, when we hit 50% or so of elbow extension, right? So if I'm at about a 45-degree angle, a little more, a little less, that's when I'm going to start internally rotating my shoulder to kind of take the force up into the sword and kind of bring it around this way. So what that looks like head on is from my set position, torso rotation, arm extension. When I hit that 50% point, then my hand falls over like this, and I strike them with the flat of the blade, which is where the flat wrap gets its name. So if your flat wrap is hitting with any other portion of your sword aside from this flat plane, you're not doing it right. So for the same side shoulder, it just looks like this. Assume your set position, 90, 90, 90. Torso rotation, arm extension, internal shoulder rotation. And it should land just like that on the outside of the shoulder. It's a pretty simple shot. So just to recap, torso rotation, 50% arm extension, internal shoulder rotation. It would get that around the shield. So if you can picture Pete over here with the shield, this has a high chance of kind of going around the outside rim of the shield by landing flat like this. Now, this is not the only way to throw a flat wrap. Another variation of the flat wrap is targeted is this same side hit. Let me just see this. I mean, it's a little indecent, but I'm going to try to hit him in the oblique here with this flat wrap. So this is really powerful for any hand matching situations or a Florentine where you're trying to get around kind of a low guard where a diagonal chop won't really do. So from the set position, you just kind of fall out like this as you rotate back, and as you extend and rotate, you get that internal shoulder rotation right there. And when you do this shot, I want you to get just a little bit of knee flexion, right? So not a ton, but I want you to change your height by like 2 or 3 inches, just so that you're used to, oh, I have to throw a low shot, I need to cue a little bit of knee flexion and make sure that I drop my center of gravity a little bit to get a better angle on the shot. So what that same side hit flat wrap looks like is this. Now, there's one more flat wrap. It's often called the high cross. I don't really like to use the term high cross because I can never really get anybody to describe to me exactly what a high cross looks like. But a offside, sword side, typically if you're right on right, flat wrap to this cross side body is a really powerful way to lead because it essentially looks like this. And if you're thinking about the things that your opponent can throw back at you, your hand is already covering one top quadrant, right? And since you're extended, this is kind of a far away position and an easy position to switch to when you need to block. So I also want you to practice that high cross offside flat wrap. So it looks like this. It's the same deal. So torso rotation, arm extension, internal internal shoulder rotation. So that seems to be, actually there's one more version of a flat rep that I want to talk to you about called the flat slap. Now this one isn't on your shot sheet because I don't think that this is as important of a shot to master, because the only time it seems to be useful is in single sword matches when you're right on right or left on left. So if, Gerald, if you just stand right here. So if Jerry is holding his hand out right here and I want to target the inside of his wrist right here, I would use a flat wrapping motion to kind of just slap the inside of his forearm, right? You don't want to go too deep because this particular shot, when it ends in this position. It doesn't have the best possible guard, right? So we switch besides so I don't hit Pete in the face. He's being so patient with us already today. A flat slap is just a flat wrap that looks a lot like the offside hip, the same side hip. It just doesn't have that knee flexion component, and your arm ends up a little straighter on the end. So that looks like this. So that's all of our flat reps. Thanks for joining us.